Hello, good day. We will be continuing our discussion on thinking and of course with regards to intelligence. Okay, so yung next theory that we are going to discuss would be Triarchic Theory by Robert Sternberg. Okay, he is the proponent of this Triarchic Theory. Ito naman, nagfo-focus siya on three. We have analytical, creative, and practical. When we say analytical, ito yung academic ability. Meaning to say, this should be possessed by each students. Kung hindi man ganun kataas yung ability, at least we have these analytical abilities in us. Okay? Kasi we have to analyze things. And we see that the system of education would require its learners to further analyze things in the best ways possible. Diba? And the second one, we have creative. Okay, ability to cope with novel situations and generate multiple solutions to problems. So as we have discussed last time, we should be arriving into different kinds of solutions or sets of solutions that will solve a particular problem. 'Di ba? We are not boxing ourselves into a solution na ito lang. 'Di ba? We are generating other formulas, we are generating other solutions in order to find this solution to solve a problem. Okay? And last, practical or yung street smarts. So, I have already explained the meaning of street smart. It is becoming practical, it is becoming madiskarte, or you know what to do in a certain situation or in a certain real situation. Okay, next. We have emotional intelligence or yung EQ. Remember that we have IQ, 'di ba? Intelligence quotients. Ito naman, emotional intelligence or yung emotional quotients ng isang tao. Okay, so we will be discussing this one. Intrapersonal and interpersonal skills or yung empathy nating tinatawag. Itong emotional intelligence, it is rooted on the emotions, of course, of the person. Meaning to say, we are talking about the values, we are talking about the interpersonal and even the intrapersonal skill of a person. Okay? How strong are you emotionally? Okay? Kasi there are students, not only students now, there are people who are strong enough to conquer academic problems. However, they run out of the situation, yung parang nawawala sila when it comes to their emotional well-being. Okay? So, lagi naman nating sinasabi that every aspect of our lives would be as important as the other. Diba? Our mental health, our physical health, and of course, our emotional health should also be given emphasis or given lots of importance. Diba? And self-insight and self-control. So, how do we control ourselves from alam niyo yun, mga different factors that may hinder us from achieving some things. Let's say, mga tukso sa buhay, vices, or even, baka hindi natin napapansin, no? In one common example would be yung pagiging impulsive natin when purchasing some things, especially yan, 11-11, 12-12, excited tayong lahat, no? But then, maybe we analyze ourselves if we are becoming self-controlling pa din. Or are we becoming this impulsive na to decide on some things that we sometimes regret at the end? Okay, so those can be some examples of self-motivation, or sometimes there are others who lack self-motivation as well. No? Yung parang nawawala na ng gana sa buhay. And in some times in our lives, ma-feel talaga natin yon. That we're lacking of motivation, we're lacking of inspiration to do more, to excel more, or to continue what we are doing. Okay? But it's not really bad naman, okay? When you feel like you're lacking motivation, ganyan, you just see the positive side of life and get motivation from it. Look at your dreams, look at the parents you do have. O kaya naman, look at the hopes you have built for yourself, 'di ba? So those could be some simple ways on how to motivate yourself. But we have a lot of different ways to motivate ourselves naman, 'di ba? Yan. And allows for coping with stress, depression, and aggressive behavior. So dito, yung emotional intelligence nating sinasabi, if high yung level of emotional intelligence mo or yung EQ mo, emotional quotients, meaning to say you are far away from getting depressed. Okay? From time to time, you get stressed, you get tired, you have aggressive behavior, impulsive decisions, but at the end of the day, you get to pull yourself back together. Okay, so that would be a good or positive result of having high emotional intelligence. Okay, sabi ko nga sa inyo, it is not enough to have a high in IQ. O kaya naman, hindi sapat na matalino ka lang. Okay, that's a reality. Especially kapag dumating ka na sa point na you need to work na, you would be part of bigger organization, bigger than your school. You will meet people in all walks of life. Ganyan. So, you need to have a high emotional intelligence. People will degrade you, people will judge you, would say negative things about you, but it should not destroy you. 'Di ba? That's why we need to have a strong foundation through increasing our emotional intelligence. Okay? Next, creativity. The ability to produce original, appropriate, and valuable ideas and or solutions to problems. So, ito naman medyo naulit na rin natin, no? We should be creative, especially we are 21st century learners or the Gen Z learners. Meaning to say, we have high hopes that we are developing different skills that would be useful for us to solve problems. O kaya naman would be useful for us to do things on our own. Okay? So that is the essence of being creative or yung creativity natin na tinatawag. Creative people do things that are novel and useful. 'Di ba? Kasi you should be creative in a good way. It should be useful, it should be full of something that would benefit you or others. Okay? Take risks. Yan. And not only creative people should take risks. Every one of us should do so. Kasi, you would only realize how far you can go if you take risks. 'Di ba? Hindi mo naman malalaman gaano ka kagaling, gaano ka katapang if you wouldn't trade something over something else. Okay? O kaya naman hindi ka take ng risk basically, 'di ba? Defy limits. Yan. We should always think outside the box. Okay? We should not enclose ourselves into one solution, into one particular paradigm. If paradigm should be shifted, then it's a must for you to do so. For you to defy limits. For you to reach horizons. 'Di ba? Be free as a bird. And, be creative enough to solve problems and all. Appreciate art and music. Ayan. These are somehow, I think naman, appreciated by a lot of us. Kung hindi man arts, at least music. Kasi music is a form of an artwork naman. Okay, next. Divergent thinking versus convergent thinking. So, we are going to differentiate each. Okay? When we say divergent thinking, freely associate to elements of problems best used in measuring creativity. When we say divergent thinking, malalim or malawak yung pag-iisip mo. You have several answers to one question. Okay? That is what we mean by divergent thinking. If you are a divergent thinker, more or less, you think outside the box, you speak from experience, kaya naman, you speak from the knowledge you know on something. Ganyan. So, that is what we mean by divergent thinking. Kaya nga siya divergent, somehow diverse, di ba? O kaya naman various. You have various ideas in order to explain a particular thing or a concept or a theory. You can relate to it. You can relate real life situations, different kinds of scenarios for you to be able to comprehend such thing. Okay? So, that is what we mean by divergent thinking. The next one, I hope that's clear yung divergent thinking. The next one, we have convergent thinking. Convergent thinking, on the other hand, thought is limited to present facts. Okay? So, unlike divergent that we may have various answers to one question, convergent thinking only requires one or a limited answers to present some facts or to support your answer. Best used in intelligence testing. Okay? So when we say convergent thinking, may isa lang sagot or kaya naman limited na sagot to a problem. Okay? Or to a question. Ganyan. In in your exams or in your quizzes, we use convergent thinking. Kasi there is only one solution to one problem. One answer to one problem. Okay? Unlike divergent thinking, which may be manifested in some papers, reflection papers, reaction papers, that it would require you a lot of ideas for you to produce your own paper. Diba? You see the difference? Ito, very diverse yung mga ideas mo. Divergent thinking, whereas the convergent thinking, you only have limited answers. Clear? Okay, I hope that's clear, ah? Then, we have this syndrome called Savant, or some would call it Savant Syndrome. And an unusual combination of genius and low performance in different areas. So, I have already presented the different kinds or types of intelligence according to Howard Gardner. Diba? Some of us would be considering ourselves as genius. And when we say genius, more than or higher than the average. Diba? And there are people who are genius on something but would lack the ability to perform or to parang to venture in some areas. Halimbawa, you are mathematically gifted. Yan, sana all, di ba? Magaling ka sa math. Like, walang masasabi sa'yo. Uno ka, or perfect ka lagi sa exams. Basta perfect lahat sa math. However, hindi ka magaling sa English. Example, very classic example, no? Na pag sinabi natin magaling daw sa math, mahina sa English. That's only a myth, no? Pero nagkakataon siya sa ibang tao. That it would be manifested in some people. Yun nga, nasabihin ng iba na sobrang genius mo, sobrang galing mo sa ibang bagay, but you perform low in some areas. Okay, so that is Savant or Savant Syndrome. Okay, so an example of this would be autistic individuals. Yung mga autistic that we know, or those who have autism, or yung syndrome called autism, they are intelligent. Okay? Kung mapapansin nyo, meron silang particular talent that they have to show. Okay? Halimbawa, some autistic persons would be musically gifted. Or some of them would be naturalists. Magaling mag-alaga ng hayop, ng halaman. Yeah. Diba? I don't know if nanonotice nyo. Or some of them would be sporty. Diba? So, iba't iba yung mga klase ng intelligence that they would possess. Okay? The puzzle of Savant Syndrome is slowly unraveled. Diba? Parang hindi siya ganun hindi pa ito masyadong na-explain ng mas maayos. But then, ang sinasabi lang naman that this kind of syndrome does exist. Okay, so look at this bell-shaped curve. So, in your statistics, this is normal distribution curve. Diba? Okay, so this is the approximate percentage of population of a certain community. Okay, so ito, nakikita natin dun sa end tail, dalawang end tail, intellectually deficient and very superior. No? So, karamihan sa atin, or karamihan sa isang particular community would fall under low average and high average. But the end of the day, kita nyo itong violet na na shaded part. Itong shaded part. So, average pa rin naman itong mga tao. Kasi nga, we possess different kinds of intelligence. That's why we are considering ourselves average persons or intellectual persons. Okay? Ayan, dull normal, the borderline, medyo, diba? Medyo ito yung low. And above average, konti lang din. Superior, pakonti ng pakonti siya to the very superior. If you're looking at the right side of the bell-shaped curve. Okay? So, ito yon. It follows normal distribution naman. Meaning to say, yung normal natin, common sa ating lahat, would fall under the average category. Okay? The bell-shaped curve is referred to as a normal curve by psychologists. So, ganun din. Among statisticians, they would also call this normal curve. Okay? And thinking, memory, yan. So, ito siya, encoding, transforming information into a form that can be entered and retained in the memory system. So, when we say encoding, ito yung nilalagay mo na sa utak mo for a long term. Okay, ito yung process, mamaya explain ko sa inyo, itong nasa baba. Ine-encode mo na yung information para i-store forever. Okay, for long-term memory na siya. Later on, we'll tackle about this. Storage naman, retaining information in memory so that it can be used at a later time. So, when we say storage naman, ini-store mo lang temporarily ang informations. Okay? Best example of this would be when you are taking an exam. Okay? When you're taking an exam, you memorize the concepts, you know all the theories, you even know the formulas and all, but those are temporary. Okay? Yung iba nga sa atin, after ng exam, exam, tapos na. Hindi mo na naaalala yung the next day. 'Di ba? If you happen to do that, then storage yung tawag natin sa process na yon. Okay? We just store this information temporarily. Okay? And retrieval, recovering information stored in memory so that we can we will be consciously aware of it. Okay? So, ibig sabihin lang nitong retrieval, inaalala mo. You are able to recall some memories, some information that you have temporarily stored. That is what we mean by retrieval. So, in this process, kita nyo, sensory. So, sa sensory, di ba, nasa-sense ng 5 organs natin. So, anything that can be sensed by our 5 organs, ang tawag natin doon, input. Okay, mahangin dito, malamig dito, nakita ko siya, naamoy ko to, etc., etc. That is sensory or yung input nyo. Masastore lang siya sa sensory memory. Okay, this one is temporary also. Okay, na-sense lang siya, na-perceive lang siya ng katawan natin, but not necessarily you remember. Kaya nga halimbawa, diba? Halimbawa, papasok ka sa school. Sumakay ka ng jeep, sumakay ka ng shuttle, napansin mo yung damit ng mga kaklase mo, anong kulay ng damit ng kaklase mo, ng teacher mo, nakita mo siya, narinig mo siya, but those are temporary. Pag uwi mo sa inyo, limot mo na yung kulay ng damit ng katabi mo, or ng kaklase mo, or ng teachers mo. 'Di ba? Kaya siya temporary. Those will only be stored at the sensory memory. Okay, dun lang yon. Then the next one comes attention. Okay? Sa attention na, working or short-term memory. Kapag pumasok na sa'yo yung input through your sensory organs, or sense organs, meaning to say, and you put on some attention, halimbawa, tinandaan mo talagang naka-red si ma'am. O kaya naman, tinandaan mo na naka-white yung katabi mo. For example, or naka-black. If you put on some attention, then that process would lead to having short-term memory. Matatandaan mo pa rin yan pag uwi kapag talagang inalala mo. Okay? Kasi you put on some attention. And this variable would lead you to having short-term memory. Matatandaan mo within the day. Pero after a month, after a week even, or baka nga kinabukasan, you would completely forget about it. Okay? And yan, maintenance rehearsal, ibig sabihin lang dito, you need to maintain. Okay? You need to have an attention or to put on some attention for this memory to be stored. Okay? Kasi stimulus lahat yan. We have a lot of stimulus everyday. Stimuli everyday, no? Lahat ng senses natin, 5 senses natin, nakaka-perceive yan through different stimulus. 'Di ba? So, ang sinasabi dito, it needs rehearsal. You need to have a practice. Halimbawa, bigyan tayo ng example ha, doon sa previous example na natin. Kung araw-araw naka-read yung teacher mo or every meeting naka-read yung teacher mo at napapansin mo yon because you pay attention, masastore yan sa utak mo. Baka after 1 month, pag narinig mo yung pangalan ni Ma'am ganito, halimbawa, Ma'am A, Ma'am ABC, ganyan, maaalala mo na naka-red siya lagi. Or red is her favorite color. Okay? So that is your short-term memory. Clear. I hope I'm making myself clear. Then next one, we have encoding. Okay? You now have the process called encoding. When we say encoding, you are preparing this short-term memory to last forever. Okay? Meaning to say, long-term memory na siya. Example of this would be experiences. If you had a rare experience on something, let's say you went to a beach, you went to your JS prom, your 18th birthday, etc. So, ini-encode mo yung information. This will not only last short term or temporarily. Ini-encode ng utak mo yan, automatically. Na ibig sabihin, I should keep this forever. Okay? These should be stuck in my mind. Yun yung sinasabi ng brain natin. And that will lead to having a long-term memory. Okay? Ito yung mga tipo ng alaala na hindi mo na talaga makakalimutan ever. Okay? Kasi una, meron kang input. You put on some attention. Tas in-encode mo sa utak mo. Ang tendency or the result would be, you will have a long-term memory. And yung retrieval nating sinasabi dito, these long-term memory can be lost. You know you want to stock these memories in your mind, but then, due to some factors, it can also be lost. Okay? Bakit malolost? Halimbawa, if you don't think about it na, kumbaga, wala nagpapaalala sa'yo, there would be no stimulus that would remind you of this. So, more or less, makakalimutan mo na siya. Okay? Halimbawa, natandaan mo naman talaga na ang father of psychology would be si Wilhelm Wundt. Okay? Natandaan mo talaga yon. But, as years go by, and hindi mo siya na-encounter, baka makalimutan mo. Okay? So, that would be a factor that would lead to having lost your memory. Maaalala mo pa rin naman, it just need to be retrieved. Okay? Maaalala mo pa rin siya. Kailangan mo lang i-review. Okay? Halimbawa kasi ganito, isa pang example para magets nyo. Halimbawa, on your elementary graduation, or nung graduate ka ng elementary, I hope that's something na memorable. Diba? Pero hindi mo naman siya araw-araw naaalala. Diba? We have different experiences every day. And, hindi mo siya araw-araw na naiisip. Diba? Maiisip mo lang siya pag may nagpaalala sa'yo. Or kung nakapanood ka ng another elementary graduation, maaalala mo. And that is the stimulus that would remind you of your memory. Okay? I hope everything's clear. Next, forgetting. Okay? Encoding failure. Okay? Or yung habituation. Bakit tayo nakakalimot? That is the question. Bakit tayo nakakalimot? Meaning to say, hindi masyadong na-encode ng utak mo yung nangyari. Hindi ka masyadong nag-put ng attention, hindi ka masyadong nag-put ng some input, hindi ka naglagay ng masyadong input. That's why nag-fail yung encoding. You didn't remember all the details, but then you remember things. Yes, naaalala mo naman somehow, but not clearly and vividly. Okay? Next, interference theories. Yan, math problem in book versus math problem in final test. Meaning to say, ng interference theories, nag-iiba. Parang feeling mo, pag binabasa, I don't know if you relate, kasi ako to yata. Pag binabasa mo, pag inaaral mo, ang dali lang naman pala. Kapag may example, nasusundan mo. Pero pag ikaw na yung magsosolve, parang ang hirap na bigla. 'Di ba? So that is what we mean by interference theories. It seems na nag-iiba-iba yung mga bagay-bagay. Okay? Hindi lang math problems, kahit ano that would be associated with this. Next, decay. Yan, decline due to age. So this one is biological naman. As we age, we may be forgetting about things. Halimbawa, um, ayan, tumatanda na kayo, then hindi na nahahasa yung utak natin. Maybe, we forget about things. Even your long-term memory can be lost. Ganyan. And hindi naman siya bago. People are really vulnerable of it. And sabi ko nga sa inyo, in the first meeting, neurons, they do die. Okay? And for us to prevent decaying, kumbaga, para hindi mabulok or mamatay yung mga neurons natin, we keep on enhancing our brain. You read, you solve crossword problems, do mathematical equations from time to time. Kumbaga, hasain lang natin para hindi pumupurol yung utak natin. Kasi that's the reality eh. As we age, hindi lahat, no? Hindi lahat ay tumatalino as we age. Some would lead to having early Alzheimer's. Man, ganyan. May mga ganun talaga. And that's the end of my presentation. So, I hope I made everything clear. So, I will be posting your next activity sa BBL na lang. Okay? Please stay safe, guys.